An SUV rammed a pyrotechnic store in Florida, which started a fire and the fireworks warehouse detonated. The driver of the SUV died on the spot. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I am Nina Brichielago Flores, and this is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. urges Filipinos to continue Bonifacio's legacy. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Vice President Sara Duterte earn high approval, trust ratings. COVID protests escalate in China's Guangzhou. Russia and U.S. postpone talks for strategic arms reduction treaty. And China's former President Jiang Zemin dies at age 96. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has urged Filipinos to be the best kind of themselves and imitate the loyalty and love of country of Andres Bonifacio. The president made the call as he led the commemoration today of Bonifacio's 159th birthday. Edan Santos has the story.
Ipinababatid namin ang pagdating ng ating panuhing pandahon.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. led today's commemoration of the 159th birth anniversary of God Andres Bonifacio, the father of Philippine Revolution against the Spanish colonizers. Marcos attended today's flag-raising and wreath-laying ceremonies at the Bonifacio Monument in Caloocan City. During his address, the president said it is important to remember Bonifacio and other Filipino heroes in developing national consciousness based on the country's history, which will guide the nation toward a better future.
Ang pagsariwa sa alaala ni God Andres at ng iba pang mga bayani ay mahalaga upang pagyamanin natin ang ating pagpapahalaga at pag-unawa sa ating kasaysayan na siyang nagsisilbing gabay tungo sa mas magandang kinabukasan. Ipinagdiriwang natin ang araw na ito upang gunitain ang mga kontribusyon ni Andres Bonifacio sa paghubog sa ating pagkakalinlanlan bilang mga Pilipino.
The president also appealed to Filipinos to continue honoring Bonifacio and imitate the loyalty and love he had for the country. Marcos also urged Filipinos to be vigilant in protecting the country from social ills by becoming dutiful and law-abiding citizens.
Kaya't hinihikayat ko ang aking mga kapwa Pilipino na patuloy na parangalan si Bonifacio at ang lahat ng mga bayamang Pilipino, kilala man o hindi, na nag-alay ng kanilang buhay upang matiyak ang kalayaan at pagkakakilanlan ng siyang ipinagmamalaki natin ngayon. Bilang mga tagapamana ng kalayaang kanilang ipinaglaban, tungkulin natin bilang mga Pilipino na panatilihing buhay ang diwa ng kanilang mga layunin at siguruhing mapayapa, malaya at masagana ang ating sambayanan.
The president also called on the Filipinos to be the best of themselves, noting that one of Bonifacio's legacies to Filipinos that everyone can be a hero in his or her own way. And as the country faces the challenges of modern times, the Marcos believes that Bonifacio, other heroes, and the country's modern heroes serve as examples for the nation to attain its goals.
Habang patuloy tayong nakikibaka sa mga hamon ng modernong panahon, naway maging halimbawa si Bonifacio at ang ating mga bayani noon at ngayon upang magtagumpay tayo sa ating mga hangarin. Sama-sama nating harapin ang mga hamon ng panahon ngayon ng may pagmahal sa bayan, determinasyon, tapang, karangalan upang maitaguyod natin ang isang Pilipinas na tunay na nais natin ipagmalaki.
Eden Santos reporting for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Vice President Sara Duterte hopes that the courage and heroism of God Andres Bonifacio would instill deep patriotism among Filipinos. In a statement, Vice President Duterte joins the nation in commemorating the 159th birth anniversary of the father of Philippine Revolution. Duterte said Bonifacio's love of the country should inspire us to be constantly united in overcoming difficulties as a nation. The Vice President said she also hopes that the fire started by Bonifacio in the name of freedom will rekindle a deep sense of patriotism among Filipinos as the country ushers a future strongly forged by unyielding solidarity and acts of selflessness, courage, and bravery for the country and fellow Filipinos. According to a member of the family of God Andres Bonifacio, the political intramurals during the time of the Philippine Revolution continue to hamper the country's development. Now let's hear more from Vic Somintak.
The Philippine Revolution history will not be complete without touching on the political conflict between our heroes Andres Bonifacio and General Emilio Aguinaldo, and the lessons learned from that experience in history could still be applied in modern-day politics. According to Attorney Gary Bonifacio, Andres Bonifacio's great-grandson, Attorney Bonifacio says, until now, the Filipino people continue to fight to achieve genuine freedom, especially with its struggles against poverty. According to history, the conflict between Bonifacio and Aguinaldo deepened because of the political intramurals between their parties, the Magdiwang and Magdalo. Attorney Bonifacio believes that politics remain as the main reason why the Philippine Revolution against the Spanish colonizers did not succeed during those times.
Tandaan po natin, nung itinatagpo ni na Andres Bonifacio ang Katipunan, pero hindi lang nila hinubog yung mga individual na maging isang mabuting Pilipino, kundi hinubog niya po ang lahat ng mga kasapi ng Katipunan at yung magiging leader ng ating bansa na maging isang marangal na Pilipino.
Vic Somintak reporting for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
As the country commemorates Bonifacio Day, the Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, has reminded employers regarding the holiday pay scheme for their employees. Labor Secretary Bienvenido Laguesma says private sector employers have a legal obligation to rightfully pay their employees. And since Bonifacio Day is a regular holiday, an employee who did not report for work is entitled to a 100% daily wage. If the employee reports for work on a regular holiday, they would receive 200% of their daily wage for the first 8 hours of work and an additional 30% of their hourly rate after 8 hours. If the employee is on a day off but reported to work, he will receive an additional 30% on his daily rate and 200% of his daily wage. And if it surpasses 8 hours of work, he will be entitled to another 30% of his hourly rate as an additional pay. Majority of Filipinos approve and trust President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. This was the result of the latest Tugon ng Masa poll survey of the Octa Research released on Wednesday. Based on the survey, 86% of the respondents trust the chief executive, while 78% approve of his performance. Out of the numbers surveyed, only 4% expressed distrust in President Marcos Jr., while 5% were not satisfied with his performance. The president's highest trust rating was in Mindanao at 92%, while he registered an 82% trust rating in the National Capital Region. Marcos Jr. got the highest boost from adult Filipinos belonging to Class E, or the poorest of the poor, registering 90%. Meanwhile, Vice President Sara Duterte also earned majority trust and approval scores at 88 or 86% and 80% respectively. In terms of awareness, the Octa Research Survey showed 100% of adult Filipinos are aware of Marcos Jr. and Duterte Carpio. Octa Research conducted its latest survey from October 23 to 27 with 1,200 adult respondents across the country. President Marcos described it as very encouraging, saying it is vital for government policies and programs to be felt by Filipinos across all socio-economic classes. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas or BSP has projected a 7.4 to 8.2% inflation rate for November. The BSP made the projection following an increase in electricity bills, liquefied petroleum products, and agricultural products due to previous calamities. This October, the inflation rose to 7.7% because of increases in prices of food, non-alcoholic beverage index, and other products. BSP Governor Felipe Medalla confirmed that the supply shocks like electricity and fare have prompted an increase in prices of commodities. The Energy Regulatory Commission or ERC has suspended for 3 months the collection of feed and tariff allowance for FIT-all. The amount is the part of electricity bill for the development and promotion of renewable energy in the country. ERC Chairperson Mona Lisa Di Malanta said the Commission understands the effect to consumers of increases in the price of commodities. The suspension of FIT-all starting in December is a way of the Commission to alleviate the public from the effects of high inflation, including an increase in electricity rate due to external pressures. During the holidays, a health expert has reminded the public to continue observing the health protocols to protect themselves against COVID-19 infections. Epidemiologist Dr. John Wong made a call following a spike in virus infections amid relaxed mask-wearing policy of the government. Although cases have started decreasing, experts warn it may peak again because of various holiday gatherings. Wong also called on homeowners and establishments owners to ensure proper ventilation, and the government should strictly impose the indoor air quality standards. Wong said the public should adhere to vaccination, ventilation, masking, and distancing to have a safe celebration during the holiday season. Coming up, COVID protests escalate in Guangzhou. EU chief proposes special court to try Russia's crimes.
Against the sovereign state.
And NATO allies pledge fuel generators to help Ukraine through winter. Meta ng Agila International will be back after this short break.
Sunod sa Counterpoint.
Ang Mandaluyong nung araw was only noted for correctional and the mental. Alam mo, kung babalikan ko yung aking kabataan, hindi ko akalaing I would be where I am now. Sometimes I feel guilty. Then hanggang ngayon, pag napag-uusapan yan, I cannot help but feel it.
Kasama si Atty. Sal Panelo at Mayor Benjamin Abalos Sr. sa Counterpoint tuwing Miyerkules alas 10:30 ng gabi dito sa Net 25.
Mayor Ben, alam mo yung mga nakukulong, nagiging great. You remember what your response was to
Hindi
me?
bali, huwag na ako maging great, wala akong makulong.
Residents in Gwangju have clashed with white hazmat-suited riot police as frustration with strict COVID-19 rules grows stronger. Footage circulated online shows police clutching shields to protect themselves from debris, stones, and glass thrown at them by people. Authorities advance in formation as they combat and arrest angry protesters. Reports say the arrested residents are escorted to an unknown location. Another video clip shows a tear gas canister landing in the middle of a small crowd on a narrow street, with people then running to escape the fumes. Many Chinese claim long-running COVID restrictions in the country contributed to deaths. Yet news agencies often quote Chinese authorities denying the said allegations. After protests erupted opposing Beijing's strict policies to combat COVID-19, Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva of the International Monetary Fund warns it may have to slash its growth forecasts for China. Georgieva says there is indeed the possibility that in this time of very high uncertainty, there might be a need to revise the projections down for China.
China also is looking into its zero COVID policy with a perspective to shift to more targeted response to COVID cases, so there could be less interruption for the Chinese economy and less negative spillover for the rest of the world. We have been supportive of looking into what China can do to make its COVID policy more effective for China itself and for its role in the world economy.
It could be remembered that in October, the IMF cuts its projection for the world's number 2 economy to 3.2% this year, as it is weighed down by zero COVID policies and a slowdown in the property sector. It projected China's growth would rise to 4.4% next year. Beijing's tough approach involves compelling local governments to impose snap lockdowns and quarantine orders and limit freedom of movement in response to minor outbreaks. Demonstrations not seen in decades erupted in major cities, opposing COVID lockdowns and demanding greater political freedoms. President Joe Biden vows that the U.S. economy will not be held hostage anymore by China's dominance over global supply chains. Biden touts efforts to manufacture semiconductor components domestically in a speech at an SK Siltron CSS plant in Michigan.
I had a long meeting with Xi Jinping at the G20. We have met for over 80 hours over the last 10 years. We know each other well. And he's a little upset that we're deciding we're going to once again be, and so are European friends. They're talking about the supply chain. We're going to be the supply chain. The difference is going to be we're going to make that supply chain available to the rest of the world, but we're not going to be held hostage anymore. So
Biden says instead of relying on chips made overseas in places like China, the supply chain for those chips will be in America. The U.S. president says it is a game changer. He says by making things here in America, the U.S. will be shipping them overseas instead of shipping jobs overseas.
We invented the chip in America.
According to an official, 3 people died while 23 are injured after a suicide bomber targeted a police truck in western Pakistan. The domestic chapter of the Taliban has claimed responsibility for the blast. They also call the incident as a martyrdom attack. The Pakistan Taliban is also known as Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or TTP, which was separated from the Taliban Afghanistan but shares a common hardline Islamist ideology. According to senior police official Ajar Mehasar, the blast targeted a police team preparing to escort polio vaccinators in the city of Quetta. The incident's victims were identified as a policeman, a woman, and a child. A driver died after crashing into a Florida fireworks store that went up in flames after the impact. As per official reports, John Macano, the 53-year-old driver, is driving an SUV along West New Haven Avenue in West Melbourne when he struck at Toyota, causing both cars to careen in the intersection and into the Phantom Fireworks store parking lot. The latest report tells 2 Phantom Firework workers who were at the back of the store escaped the scene. Meanwhile, Marcano was found dead while the woman driving the Toyota was uninjured. The cause of the crash is still under investigation. Firefighters worked to clear mud and rubble at the site of a deadly landslide that took place on Saturday on the small Italian island of Ischia. Authorities say at least 8 people died while 4 people are still missing. A wave of earth and debris crashed through the small town of Casamicciola Terme amid heavy rains on Saturday. It destroyed houses and swept cars down the sea. The latest body to be recovered was a 15-year-old boy, killed along with his younger brother and sister. As the island mourned the death of these people, including a 21-year-old baby, it emerged that former Mayor Giuseppe Conte has called 4 days earlier for at-risk areas to be evacuated. He says even after sending 23 emails to authorities, nobody responded. The devastation in Ischia comes just weeks after 11 people died in heavy rains and flooding in the central Italian region of Marche. Negotiations on arms control between Russia and the U.S. have been unexpectedly postponed just a day ahead of a scheduled meeting in Cairo. Here's Maria Finoscino of RT News for the details.
We now hear from Russia's foreign ministry that the session of the Bilateral Consultative Commission on the Russian-American START Treaty that was supposed to begin its work on Tuesday in Cairo and last for 8 days has been postponed to a later date. The ministry does not indicate the reason for that, but I have to say that it was very unexpected. RT crew, me including, was supposed to be there on the ground covering these important talks, and we only learned about it cancelled 5 hours before the flight to the Egyptian capital, and we are now waiting for the new dates to be announced. And I have to say that these talks have been very much anticipated by both sides and by the rest of the world. Of course, there were some positive vibes from Moscow and Washington ahead of the meeting. The new START treaty is the only agreement today that is left out there regulating the world's 2 largest strategic arsenals, the key nuclear arms control agreement, of course, very important. It was last extended back in 2021 for the next 5 years. And according to this agreement, Moscow and Washington were supposed to inspect each other's weapons sites. But first, the inspections had been cancelled due to pandemic. And then earlier this year, again, there were obstacles, obviously, because the relations between the 2 countries deteriorated dramatically following Russia's special military operation in Ukraine. The main objection of the meeting between the officials from America and Russia, both military personnel and diplomats in Cairo, was of course to make sure that these very important on-site inspections resume. And now with the talks postponed, there is no immediate or clear answer to when or if the 2 countries can back to discuss this important issue.
EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen on Wednesday floated the idea of a specialized court to put Russia's top officials on trial for the war in Ukraine. According to the EU chief, Russia must pay for its horrific crimes, including the crime of aggression against a sovereign state. In order to continuously support the International Criminal Court, von der Leyen suggested a specialized court supported by the United Nations to investigate and prosecute Russia's crime of aggression should be created. Von der Leyen added that they are ready to start working with the international community to get the broadest international support possible for the specialized court. NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg says allies agree on more support for Ukraine to fix its infrastructure. Western leaders gather in Bucharest for a 2-day meeting. They all agree that they will keep on sending arms and air defenses to help Ukraine to protect itself. Stoltenberg says NATO allies are providing unprecedented support by making additional pledges to the organization's comprehensive assistance package for Ukraine. Former Chinese leader Jiang Zemin died Wednesday at the age of 96, state media reported, hailing him as a great communist revolutionary who helped quell the 1989 pro-democracy protests. Jiang took power in the aftermath of the Tiananmen Square crackdown, which the military used deadly force to end the uprising, and led China towards its emergence as a global economic powerhouse. His death was announced by the major bodies of China's ruling Communist Party through a letter where they expressed profound grief. Indicated in the letter that Jiang's cause of death was leukemia and multiple organ failure after all his medical treatments had failed. Even with his loss, people will always remember Jiang as an outstanding leader, a great Marxist, a great proletarian revolutionary, a statesman, a military strategist and diplomat, and a long-tested communist fighter, an outstanding leader of the great cause of socialism with Chinese characteristics that brought a significant difference to the Chinese nation. Up next, 19 injured in ethane pipeline explosion in Mexico's Veracruz. IDS says half of world's democracies in decline. And WMO chief says all regions experience water extremes in 2021. Please stay tuned. Matanang Agila International will be right back.
Congratulations, Attorney Sal Panelo, for being given the Lifetime Achievement in Public Service Award by Gawad America 2022 from your Counterpoint and Net 25 family.
Ano ba ang malimit na ipinagmamalaki?
Hintuturo! Ano kung may paglilingkod namin sa inyo? Dahil sa teacher nila, ayaw na nilang pumasok sa school.
Pinasulat ko sa anak mo yung pangalan niyang buo.
Yung anak ko naman, pinagbibigkas siya ng babe, bibo, bu. Eh, hindi naman siya sinabihan kasi kabisaduhin yun. Babe bilang alam niya, yung bobo hindi pa. Hindi na po. 5, 4, 3.
Ngayong linggo sa Cine Throwback. Ngayong linggo, alas 12 ng tanghali. Dito lang sa Net 25.
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together, let's get together sa Net 25.
This We are back with more global news here on Matanang Agila International. 19 people were injured after a Petróleos Mexicanos or Pemex pipeline exploded due to leakage. Authorities said most of the injured victims suffered first-degree burns. According to a police report, the explosion took place at 3 p.m. during maneuvers by Pemex workers, State Civil Protection, and the Mexican Army. The teams were trying to plug a leak in the gas pipeline, but it exploded. Due to the massive blast, authorities also evacuated 150 people. Mexican authorities are still in the process of controlling the active fire. Within a day this week, local authorities confirmed the French emergency services have rescued 240 migrants heading in a small boat across the southern coast of England. According to France's maritime prefecture of the Channel and the North Sea, the total number of rescued migrants came from 5 different operations between Monday and Tuesday off Calais on France's northern coast. This month, a deal was signed by Britain and France for UK authorities to increase what their French-paid counterparts are to prevent crossings. On Monday, UK authorities reported that 426 migrants were detected crossing the channel after a few tried to cross during a period of bad weather. While on Tuesday, UK police arrested and in charge of a key role in the deaths of at least 27 people who drowned in an attempt to cross the channel by riding a dinghy. Recent reports say Albanian nationals are now the focus of the group as numerous Albanians attempt to cross the channel. Pentagon warns that China is rapidly building up its nuclear weapons capabilities, and it may have 1,500 warheads in its strategic arsenal by 2035. The United States Department of Defense also claims that Beijing is narrowing its firepower gap with Washington. Pentagon's annual report on China's military strength says Beijing currently has about 400 nuclear warheads, up from a previous estimate of 350. By comparison, the U.S. has 3,750 active warheads and a total stockpile of more than 5,000. U.S. officials continue to express concerns that as China's nuclear prowess grows, the country's leaders may rethink their policy against launching a nuclear first strike. A senior official also questions Beijing's intent of ramping up its nuclear weapons. Beijing claims a U.S.-guided missile cruiser trespassed in its waters since or near the Spratly Islands in the South China Sea. China's defense ministry says the USS Chancellorsville seriously violated Beijing's sovereignty and security. The U.S. Navy, in return, dismisses China's allegations, saying it is false. U.S. officials say it was acting within its rights under international law and was conducting a freedom of navigation operation in the South China Sea. They also accuse China of attempting to restrict the legal parlance of innocent passage. The U.S. Navy asserts that unlawful and sweeping maritime claims in the South China Sea pose a serious threat to the freedom of the seas. During the new Iraqi Prime Minister's first official visit to Iran, Tehran and Baghdad identified key priorities, namely fighting terrorism, maintaining mutual security, and extending economic cooperation. Reports said President Ibrahim Raisi received Mohammed Shia al-Sudani. Raisi expressed hopes of bolstering ties that have lately been hit by tensions over Iran carrying out cross-border strikes against exiled opposition groups. Sudani came to power last month after a year-long tussle between political factions. Raisi believes security, peace, cooperation, and regional stability are very important. He says the fight against the terrorist groups, organized crime, drugs, and other insecurity that threaten the region depends on the common will of their two nations. On the other hand, Sudani says Iraq's government is determined not to allow any group of party to use its territory to undermine and disrupt Iran's security. Since nationwide protests erupted in Iran more than 2 months ago, Iranian officials have accused Kurdish opposition groups exiled in northern Iraq of stoking the unrest. Meanwhile, the Islamic Republic has repeatedly launched deadly cross-border strikes. According to the 2022 report produced by IDEA, half of democracies are experiencing erosion. IDEA, or IDEA, is a Stockholm-based international institute for democracy and electoral assistance. Secretary General Kevin Casa Zamora says the overall trend is very bleak. He says the extraordinarily severe headwinds for democracy are now intensified by the political fallout from the global economic crisis. Casa Zamora believes that the crisis started with the pandemic and the economic consequences of the war in Ukraine.
There are bright spots amidst all this, but they are few and far between. And let me just mention that, for example, the effervescence of civic action around the world continues. We're seeing that, for example, in the youth movements connected to the struggle against the climate crisis, but also in places like Iran, where people have gone out to demand freedom and equality and dignity. So there are a few bright spots, but the overall trend is very bleak. Democratic systems have really wobbled over the past couple of decades, and quite clearly this has become a burning issue in our age. We have to be much more radical in terms of dealing with the grotesque levels of inequality that we are seeing that are, as I said, incompatible with any notion of democracy.
Lawyers in the North Central African country of Chad are going on strike. The walk has been sparked by the mass trial of 401 people arrested during and after anti-government demonstrations in October. The lawyers say they will remain off the job until the trial is over. They say the accused does not have legal representation and may end up wrongfully convicted. Prosecutors have said those who are charged will be tried inside the high-security prison of Coro Toro. Hearings will take place between November 29th and December 4th. Officially, about 50 people died when police opened fire on demonstrators. 10 of the dead were members of the country's security force. Ecuador has nearly doubled the number of prison guards as it continues to crack down on brutal violence between drug gangs in prisons. Prisons have become the battleground for gangs trying to control the drug trade. In the last 2 years, the violence has claimed the lives of about 400 inmates. Authorities announced that nearly 1,500 newly trained guards will be joining the ranks of the existing 1,500 officers. At times, they have been severely outnumbered by the 32,000 inmates they oversee. Ecuador President Guillermo Lasso says increasing guards is part of the plan to regain control of the country's 36 prisons. He also says he plans to improve prison conditions and reduce inmate populations. Mayor Eric Adams says New York will start involuntarily hospitalizing mentally ill people who live in the streets or on the subway. This is a new push to fight growing crime in the most populous city of the United States. Mayor Adams points out that it is the city's moral obligation to help the mentally ill get the treatment and care they need. Next year, the state legislature and executive branch will consider a bill allowing police, healthcare professionals, and social workers to intervene and seek to hospitalize, by force if necessary, the homeless people deemed to have psychiatric problems. After taking office in January, Adams quickly pledged to remove the many homeless people who live in the city's fast subway system. This came after a young Asian American woman was pushed to her death in front of an oncoming train by a man with mental health issues. The man was known to police and hospital officials. New York City has an estimated 50,000 homeless people. According to New York Police Department statistics, a total of 399 people have been killed in New York as of November 27, compared to 440 in all of 2021. The United Nations says all regions of the world saw water extremes last year, both floods and droughts. In its first annual State of Global Water Resources report, the UN's World Meteorological Organization, or WMO, says large areas of the planet recorded drier than normal conditions in 2021. The WMO report also says billions of people had insufficient fresh water. The report assesses the effects of changes in the climate, environment, and society on the Earth's freshwater resources, limited supplies that are under growing demand so they can be managed better. WMO head Peterita Alas says the impacts of climate change are often felt through water, more intense and frequent droughts, more extreme flooding, more erratic seasonal rainfall, and accelerated melting of glaciers. These have cascading effects on economies, ecosystems, and all aspects of our daily lives.
At the moment, 2.3 billion inhabitants of our 8 billion people on the planet, they are suffering because of water issues, and we expect that by 2050 we could see even 5 billion people who will suffer from water challenges. It's both drought and flooding problems, and also impacts of melting of the mountain glaciers. So this is the area through which the impacts of climate change are felt most.
The report reveals that some 3.6 billion people face inadequate access to fresh water at least 1 month per year. That is forecast to rise to more than 5 billion by 2050. According to UN studies, between 2001 and 2018, 74% of all natural disasters were water-related. And in 2021, all regions saw devastating water extremes. The 17th session of UNESCO's Intergovernmental Committee for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage opens in Rabat, Morocco. This is its first meeting to be held in person since the coronavirus pandemic. The United Nations Cultural Agency is examining 56 proposals for items to add to its lists of intangible cultural heritage. UNESCO's Assistant Director General for Culture, Ernesto Otone Ramirez, says the committee also reflects on how to ensure the safeguarding of this heritage for future generations. The French baguette, Algerian ray music, and Tunisia's harisha condiment are among this year's contenders for recognition as intangible cultural heritage by UNESCO. Other contenders include a French-Belgian application for fairgrounds, the chai culture of Azerbaijan and Turkey or Turkiye, a traditional Chinese tea processing technique, and a Central Asian lute called the rubab. The organization stresses that the list honors traditions, practices, and knowledge, and all such forms of culture that are human treasures and cannot be touched. Coming right up, autonomous truck paves the way for future transport in Sweden. Reports say Alibaba founder Jack Ma is living in Tokyo. And the Net 25 Cup returns. Stay tuned for more global news here on Mata ng Agila International.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Ay lalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Swedish truck manufacturer Scania is the first in Europe to drive an autonomous vehicle whilst delivering commercial goods. Scania's Vice President and Head of Autonomous Solutions, Peter Hafmar, says this is an innovation that could end the massive driver shortage in Europe and the U.S. He says in the U.S. alone, there is a shortage of 80,000 drivers, and that number is expected to double by 2030. Hafmar says this technology secures the delivery of goods. He assures that the computer and the sensor sets are very safe, unlike drivers who get distracted by things like checking their phones.
Then there will always be situations where the vehicle can't handle Then we have a control tower where we supervise everything. We won't take it over and steer it remotely, but we can give the vehicle instructions. For example, go to the side of the road or take another route. So we give them other guidance.
Scania engineer Goran Fialid explains how the autonomous truck works.
This was a normal truck, but they have put a lot of sensors in the truck. This was a LiDAR, it was a light, and the second LiDAR, and we have the third LiDAR in the front, and we have the other sensor in the roof. It was 10 cameras and one LiDAR, long distance LiDAR, and we have GPS and some other sensor. Sen är det 4 olika sätt att stoppa automationen. Om någonting går fel så räcker det med att du trycker på gasen så stoppar det, eller du trycker på bromsen. Bara gäller att peta så blir den en vanlig lastbil. Eller du drar i ratten bara en par centimeter så blir den precis som en vanlig lastbil, och så säger den att systemet har stannat. Och sen har vi även här en röd knapp man trycker ner, då stannar allting också på en gång. Och då är den precis som en vanlig lastbil. Inga ryck, ingenting. Det är bara...
Chinese entrepreneur Jack Ma has been living in Tokyo for nearly 6 months after Beijing's crackdown on the technology sector, the Financial Times reported Tuesday. Jack Ma, the Alibaba founder and once the richest business leader in China, has been living in Tokyo for nearly 6 months. According to people with direct knowledge of his daily activities, Ma's stay in Japan with his family has included visits to hot springs and ski resorts. Reports say he regularly visits the U.S., Israel, Spain, and the Netherlands. The Alibaba founder kept a low profile since he criticized Chinese regulators 2 years ago. He accused Beijing state banks of having a pawn shop mentality and repeatedly called for bold new players that could extend credit to the collateral poor. Later on, his companies faced a series of regulatory obstacles. Spending less time in his home in China means the billionaire has avoided the strict COVID-19 quarantines imposed on anyone entering the country. The Net25 Cup is back. The annual sports meet of Net25 employees has resumed after 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic. What happened in today's sports activities? Let's hear more from Vin Pascua.
Employees from the network's different departments competed in different sports activities in today's Net25 Cup. The annual sports activity resumed after more than 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic. The sports meet was conducted at the Central Recreation and Fitness Center along Central Avenue in Quezon City. The first event was a volleyball competition between black and gold teams participated by the HR personnel and the news department respectively. The gold team defeated the black team in 3 sets of their matches.
Pero sa amin, syempre, yung nature kasi ng work namin is mostly laging nakaupo. So mas maganda talaga na merong ganitong event na nakakapagpapawis, lalo't hindi naman na lahat bumabata, kaya kailangan physically fit. Nakakatulong to sa amin sa mentally kasi syempre sa work medyo stress, maraming iniisip na mga gagawin. Dito nakakapag-relax kahit na medyo natatalo, okay lang.
The team of ASPN and Matanang Agila Primetime competed in men's badminton. According to them, physical activities like sports are important to have fresh minds and ideas that they can use for their programs. Personnel from the finance department showed their prowess in table tennis. And to succeed, they say discipline is the key.
Kasi kailangan sa table tennis, medyo agile ka, mabilis kang kumilos.
So, kung mabigat ka, medyo mahirapan kang kumilos ng mabilis. So, kaya dapat, nandun ka dun sa weight limit mo. Dapat magaan ka. Normal naman kasi pagka meron kang sports, di ba? Karaniwan ay mabilis yung isip mo kasi gumagamit ka rin naman ng isip sa sports, no? Natitrain yung bilis ng utak mo. So, definitely, ang chain reaction yon pati sa workstation mo, magiging mabilis yung utak mo at magiging mas productive ka. Una, physically fit ka, di ba? Tapos, mentally fit ka. So, magiging productive ka sa trabaho pagka nag-sports ka.
22 participated in the bowling competition but only 5 qualified for the final round. In basketball, the black team composed of engineering and art departments competed with gold team comprised of the news team and Radyo Agila personnel. The black team defeated gold team with a score of 58 in the fourth quarter of the game. Employees, talents, anchors, and other personnel are happy with the resumption of the sports activity.
Medyo mahirap pagka wala kang sports activity dahil parang katawan mo, lagi kang nakaratay lang, di ba, no? Nahihirapan ka rin mag-isip. Pero dito kasi, it's a combination of both, no? Dito natin nade-develop yung teamwork, di ba? Lalo ngayon, ang mga kasamahan natin, kasama natin sa news production. So, makakasama natin sila. This is our first time na makasama natin sila sa mga ganitong tournament. Siyempre, sa mga ganitong klaseng activity, no, kailangan talaga to sa isang news production. Siyempre, skills ka dapat pag nasa production ka. Mas makakapag-isip ka ng mabilis, di ba? Kung laging alerto yung pag-iisip mo, 'di ba? Yung iyong katawan, 'di ba? Maaga kang gigising kasi same thing with harvesting a news, 'di ba? Hindi ka naman pwedeng gigising ka ng tanghali, 'di ba? So same thing with sports, kailangan gigising ka ng maaga, pupunta ka sa venue, magte-training ka, no, magpapalakas ka. Ganun din sa pag-harvest ng news, no? Pagka mas maaga ka, mas makukuha mo yung mga balitang kailangan mo. So napaka-importante nun.
The Net25 management said these sports activities would help its employees cope with the physical and mental health needed after the pandemic. And such activity also helps deepen the relationships among colleagues.
We believe that this is one of the major activities that would also enhance the skills and talents of Net25. We knew that any sports activity would really foster camaraderie, sportsmanship, and there's a lot of discipline in sports. And we believe that with the Net25 Cup, with the many games,
I am Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In the NBA, the Los Angeles Clippers host the Utah Jazz for the second time this year at their Filipino Heritage Night. During their meeting, the home team witnessed an LA victory and were entertained by Filipino and film artists, an experience which Clipper fans hope would be repeated. In Los Angeles, Alan Basalyaje has the story.
The buzz that is Filipino Heritage Night returns to Crypto.com Arena as the Los Angeles Clippers face off against the Utah Jazz. LA and Utah weren't the only teams with starting lineups. Filipino Heritage Night also had its own squad of entertainers and emerging talent.
I've never performed in a place like this before, yet I was somehow a little bit nervous because I didn't know how it went. I hope we actually get a billboard one day. And I hope that one day we might get picked up by Warner Brothers or some other big company. So all you got to do is just follow your dream. My motto is always keep singing, keep dreaming, keep seeing, and keep living the dream.
I play basketball and I also do pageants and I sing. So I was able to compete for the Agila Filipinas national team for 16U this summer, and I was also able to compete in the Miss Filipina Teen International pageants. Here in Los Angeles, just like seeing other like Phil-Lams, my family, we always try to connect with them because it's still just like a whole family. Like being a part of the Filipino culture is just being a part of a family.
Easy, we know you don't only rap, but tonight you really showcase rapping.
The Filipino rap community is always something to look after because the battle rap will never die. It has something that is nakatatak sa mga puso't isipan natin araw-araw. Sorry, I ran out. But basically, just tune in, Filipino rap, we got everything. Performing your songs for the NBA? Are you kidding me? Like, Filipinos just watch that in the Philippines, you know? So for me, like, just being able to go onto the court and do my thing, it's a blessing.
It was a hard-fought win for Clipper Nation, but the home team toughs it out, beating Utah 121-114. And as for Filipino Heritage Night, well, the outcome for that is always more predictable. Bottom line, the fans loved it. Alan Basoyahe, Los Angeles, California. Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Embrace Organization has opened its second branch of Hearts and Hands Blind Massage, a livelihood project that aims to help individuals with visual impairment to earn a living. Madeline Villar-Moratillo reports.
Data from the World Health Organization says that more than 2 billion individuals globally are visually impaired. Here in the Philippines, vision impairment and blindness are considered major concerns in the country. Based on the 2018 Philippine National Blindness Survey, visually impaired individuals have a hard time looking for jobs. Christine is thankful with Embrace Organization for Differently Abled Incorporated's help of providing her a job.
Pasalamat po ako sa ginawa niyo pong project na to. Nagkaroon po ng ilaw po yung madilim po naming mundo. Nagkaroon po kami ng pagkakataon na makapagtrabaho. Tapos kahit paano po makatulong sa family po namin.
With her job, Christine said she would now be able to help one of her siblings study. Christine said she's not visually impaired before.
Sa una po, sobrang hirap po talaga mag-adjust, lalo na pag dati ka nakakita tapos biglang mawawala. Sobrang hirap po kaso sanayan lang po yan eh.
Christine is just one of the employees in the newly opened branch of Hearts and Hands Blind Massage in Tagaytay City. According to Ms. Drew Santos Matias, chairperson of Embrace Organization for Differently Abled Incorporated, the project is one of the groups for livelihood projects.
Dito lamang po sa Pilipinas ay ang dami po ng mga blind na napakahirap po talagang bigyan ng pagkakataon at hanapan kung saan po sila pwedeng magtrabaho. Kaya po ito po ang isa sa inulunsad po ng pamamahala ng Iglesia ni Cristo, ang kapatid na Eduardo V. Manalo, para po makatulong sa mga kababayan natin na mga differently abled.
Matias said in the first quarter of 2023, they would also open the third branch of Hearts and Hands in Quezon City while studying the possibility of opening its branch in Visayas and Mindanao. Aside from the Hearts and Hands, the group also operates Embrace Cafe, Embrace Bake Shop, and Embrace Farm. Majority of their employees are differently abled or those with disability. Literally, the opening of Hearts and Hands today is truly a grand opening graced by influencers who all enjoyed their vegetable picking experience at Embrace Farm, followed by a pizza making session at Embrace Cafe. Madeline Villar-Moratillo reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
It's Wednesday, and to help you go through this week, here's a quote from Robert Kiyosaki, an American businessman and author. Don't let the fear of losing be greater than the excitement of winning. Well, victory is always something to look forward to, and that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores. Please stay tuned for Attorney Sal Panelo's Counterpoint with Mandaluyong City Mayor Benjamin Abalos Sr. This is Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.